And good evening. I'm late. I'm very late. I have a good reason, and I also have a cat attacking my chair. Um, but yeah, no, momentous things are happening, and they caught me by surprise and distracted me, and so I'm late. I'm very, very late for an important date. Well, so it's been a crazy week. Crazy enough that just for instance, I was not able to get a prompt in for my weekly prompt thing, and that is, well, it's unprecedented. I started the prompt challenge and I have not missed a week until now. Um, So this is that's kind of this week in a nutshell. I have been scrambling to try and keep up with things, and I am not succeeding very well on it, as you can see, because yikes. Um, so oh gosh. So my nominal topics were weather. It's spring, at least in my neck of the woods. And I am contemplating the garden, but I'm also contemplating not the garden because, yeah, I don't know. I am. It's it's a transition period. It is very much a transition period. Hi, Mom. And I am so operating under the assumption that people who would possibly talk about this aren't going to be watching it. Um, there are no safe places on the internet. I have been. This next week is going to be interesting. I'm going to have some very large decisions to make that are going to affect my family. And so part of the reason that I'm late is that I was talking to my family about um, whether or not I should make certain decisions and how that was going to affect them. Hi, Beth. So, uh, so I have a tentative offer, and one of the problems with it is that although the pay raise would be significant, the health insurance coverage would completely offset the pay raise versus what I pay now. And it would be about half the coverage that I'm currently getting. So I have to really seriously think about whether or not that's viable. The redeeming factor is that it's a temporary situation. So, hi, Juniper. So we could potentially do it for 6 months to a year, and it would work, and then things would get better. Or I can wait because it's a tentative thing and it doesn't have a time expiration on it yet, and see if one of my other options pops up before I have to make a decision on this. I don't have to take the first thing, which is a really nice place to be in. However, I also don't want to wait for too long. I have an exit plan, and I am going to execute the exit plan, and then I'm going to be free. So, the tentative offer is not local, Mom. That would be the one that would move me further away from you and everybody else. So there's reasons that I'm hesitant about that one. There's reasons I'm excited about it. But I'm also hesitant, and And even the three right now that are likely to formally make offers next week, I don't have to pick any of those. I can wait. I have several other things brewing on back burners that were just a little bit slower coming off the mark, or haven't been going on for as long. So I have options, and that's kind of a nice place to be in. But it definitely is taking a lot of conversation with the family because they need to be part of this, and I need to figure out what's going to make me happy because I've got to be able to endure this particular position for probably 2 to 3 years minimum because I want to settle in one place and not go bouncing all over the place. Well, Mom, it would be a contract to hire. So temporary in that the contract position with the sucky benefits would be temporary, and then either the company would decide to hire me or not hire me. And if they didn't hire me, I'd have some time to be job hunting, and I'd be in more or less in the location that I wanted to be in. But yeah, I'm gonna wait and see what else comes down the pike. I took the first offer the last time I was job hunting, and it was a mistake. And I wound up sticking with it for a year because I was going to stick it out and make sure it wasn't just me and that things wouldn't get better, but they didn't. And so I don't want to do that this time. I don't want to wind up in a place where I'm unhappy and unhealthy, and it's just going to get complicated for a while because I can't commit to. We'll probably plant stuff in the garden, Mom. We have the raised garden beds, and we will go ahead and start the garden, even if we wind up having to leave it to whoever comes in and takes over this house after us. And which reminds me, I need to get some black plastic. If I'm going to do that, then I want to plant through black plastic because Sanford will not weed. He has a phobia of gardens. And so I'm going to have to make sure that it's as tidy looking as possible if I take off in a couple of weeks and leave the whole shebang to the guys. Oh, but other than that, it's going to be an interesting few weeks. I have been going nonstop because I'm doing work, but I'm also my lunch hours are busy, my after work hours are busy. I have had no mental brain power I just finished up a course, so I've officially earned the certificate in natural history illustration, which was a fun little course. And I did not give it the full attention that it deserved because I didn't have time. And I'd like to take another course or two, but that's definitely waiting until I know what the job situation is. For one thing, I was thinking I might wind up having time to pick up another certificate that actually works on the resume because the natural history illustration does nothing for the resume. Yeah, Mom, I hope so too. I need to get Hat Rack ready for publication. It isn't going to take a whole lot more, I think, at this point, but it needs to be done, and I got to finish up with the taxes. I started them and then stopped because I haven't had time and energy. Hello, Ben. So that's the world of craziness on my end. Other than that, I mean, Sanford is being very supportive and kind of just giving me room to make decisions. And I could wish that I had a little more leeway and time, but I don't. Um, I'm in an untenable situation, and having a gap between work is also untenable. So I'm going to have to make up my mind. The good thing is, though, that no matter what, your one-day gaming convention is May. Is that 1 or an exclamation point? Noon to midnight. I'm not usually much of a night owl. I think we talked about this before, and I think I am interested in doing that. Getting out and doing a little socialization is sounds like a good idea at this point. Brain on the fritz. I keep saying I'm going to talk about wool socks. It's kind of a joke. It's not so much that it's about the wool socks as it just is that I wear wool socks. And okay, so it is May 1st. I will catch up with you for details then. I wear wool socks a lot. They're comfortable, they're warm. My current workplace is usually chilly, although the other day we had something went wrong with the AC, and it sounds odd. It's spring. We aren't that warm yet, but in order to completely temperature control a very large building, something went wrong anyway, and it was like a sauna in the labs. They fixed that, though. They had to, because, I mean, in a regulated environment, in a temperature-controlled environment like this, you can't have temperature swings like that in the lab, which is one of the reasons that when we were talking about me working in Texas, I wasn't too worried about it, because the vast majority of my time I will be in the lab, and labs have to be temperature controlled, so it's not like I'm going to be feeling the heat. But the wool socks is kind of this running joke between my dad and I. I don't remember. I think I used to steal his wool socks, but then we found this outlet store where we could buy like 6 pairs at a time for fairly cheap. And like the last time I managed to get up into New Hampshire, I got by the outlet store and bought a dozen pairs. Hi, John. You're not lurking too well. I know you're there. But I bought a dozen pairs of wool socks. And then my husband and my son discovered that wool socks are the cat's meow. And suddenly I had no wool socks in my drawer anymore. So that's been a couple years back. So I started buying them wool socks of their own in different colors than mine, so we could tell mine apart from theirs, and they could tell each other's apart. And then my wool socks started to wear out because, well, worn constantly, not just by me. So now we all have wool socks, and I gave wool socks in people's Christmas stockings this year, and Mom sent wool socks to the boys, Juliet's fiance and Johan. And so we had all the socks this Christmas. But I found these cute wool socks that were meant for girls, and they're in pretty colors, so kind of like pastel purples and blues and grays, but they're like dark colored, and they come up, and the top is a light color, and there's like little cat ears sticking up there. So that's what I got for us girls this year, all different colors of wool cat socks. Because why not? And this time of year, I'm really glad. Yeah, no, I don't steal Sanford's underwear. No. I've stolen his shirts. And once, I don't remember why now, but um, I actually wound up wearing a pair of Sanford's pants, which don't fit me well. I have hips and he does not. Um, but they did fit me, so. But we wear the same size shirt, so we actually have swapped like flannel shirts and t-shirts. Marriage is a strange place, you know? It's one of those things of, I kind of like the fact that um, Sanford and I both wear the same size shoes, which is because my feet are abnormally hobbit-sized large for a woman of my stature, and he has average-sized feet for a man of his stature. So this should give you an idea of the scale of my feet, those of you that don't know me. Um, but we have, from the beginning, shared a lot of oddball little things, and there's differences and similarities that when you come together as a couple, you don't necessarily think these things through. And come to think of it, now that I'm thinking about it, this kind of applies to the job hunt too, because I asked on social media earlier today, what are the overlooked things that people don't consider as part of the decision-making process when they're facing a large life change like moving or changing a job? And I've gotten some really interesting responses so far. I enjoy doing these crowdsourced lists. I haven't done a book list in a while, and I really should do another one because some of mine are outdated at this point, like the top new release kind of books. What were the best books you read last year? I think I should do that list. And the problem with book lists is that they're really time consuming because it depends on how many places I put the request for information. I have to collate all that, weed out any duplicates, and then if I want to make the book lists effective and easy for people, I have to link them all to where that people can buy the book. Not to mention that also does give me a teeny tiny little bit of money with the Amazon affiliate. But when I crowdsource lists, I get a lot of the obvious stuff that I've already thought of, but I also get some things that I might not have thought of, and it's more effective than just me trying to brainstorm by myself. One of the project management, process management things that I have been learning in some of the classes I've been taking is that guided, mentored brainstorming sessions are really effective. I mean, I've always known that brainstorming worked, and that brainstorming with 2 or more people was best. With one person, can be lopsided, and that's actually where the person who guides a brainstorming session comes in, is they can break up a log jam of everybody's all jammed up in this one idea set, and they can be like, okay, we've covered that, let's try something else. And they can keep one person from dominating the session, and kind of like a good moderator for a panel at a convention. There's several different terms for brainstorming. One of them is to call the person that's not directly participating but kind of keeping an eye on the group dynamic, is to call them a moderator. So it's really useful. I can't obviously do the moderated thing on social media. What I can do is take the biblical stance of in the multitude of counselors is wisdom, and I can take all that and kind of say, okay, what themes am I seeing over and over again, and those are probably the more important things. And of course, I mean, something like moving and job hunting is going to be highly individual. What's important to me might not be important to somebody else. Although I suspect things like decent leadership, good training programs, corporate culture, all those things are going to be pretty consistent across the board as far as being important. Moving, on the other hand, oh Lord, that one is... So one of the other things about the tentative offer on the plate is that it would involve me having to move within probably about 3 weeks. And by move, I mean boots on the ground starting work in 3 weeks. And that's if I push the issue, because they wanted it to be very quick. So that means that we don't know where we're going to be living, and we don't know if we can find something that quick. I might wind up being in a hotel for a while if I do that one. And Johan and Sanford are here trying to get this house packed and sorted and decide how much we're actually taking with us, because if we wind up renting a small apartment for a year, which is something we've talked about doing to get a feeling for the area and decide where we want to buy before we just are trying to scramble and find something. It's a lot. It's a lot. And like Sanford and I were just talking, this is one of our big differences. He could happily live on like bare minimum nothing. And I am a magpie. And I'm really trying hard to curb my magpie tendencies and not have the house too cluttered. But the house is full of stuff, and most of it's not here for decorative purposes. My books are not decorations. Mom, I think seek counsel and see counsel work in this case. No, Beth, that's what I'm trying not to do, is go jumping into a fire. And I'm just... We all want to find a good situation, and there's reasons to move. There are also reasons not to move. One being that we wouldn't have to pack this house up. I had a thing happen earlier this week that really shook my confidence in what I do, and if it was something that I should continue to do, because what I do is extremely detail oriented, and it's you need more than just a little bit of OCD and perfectionism to be an analytical chemist. Or an analytical microbiologist. Pretty much, I mean, they're different, but there's a lot of similarities. And I am not a perfectionist, never have been. I can fake it pretty well, and I find my work to be very important, so I am very careful with it. And I had something said to me that kind of shook my confidence in that, and then I talked to somebody else who I really value their input, and I've worked with them, and they were extremely encouraging, so I feel much better about it. But it was definitely one of those had a moment of, should I be doing what I'm doing, or should I be trying to do something else? And the problem is that breaking out of the mold that they want to put you in is difficult. I mean, I don't fit in a mold real well to begin with. But trying to find a job that doesn't entail doing exactly what I've been doing, that seems to be darn near impossible. I don't know why. It's like they don't think people can learn or adjust or change. And I just, that's very strange to me, because I like learning and adjusting and changing. And as a matter of fact, if I'm in a place where I'm not, and I'm doing the same thing over and over that I know how to do, I get really bored and I get really unhappy. mossy, maybe. uh, I mean, I'm not exactly a rolling stone. I've been here in Ohio for 8 years. 8 years, 3 moves in Ohio. Um, there are reasons staying here are better on my family because it means that my daughter can stay in the house that we own and she doesn't have to worry about moving and finding a different job and paying rent and all that adulty jazz that I don't know that she's ready for. Um, the other daughter would like to have us somewhat closer to her. And the son, yeah, that's the problem is I don't fit. I don't fit well. Which reminds me of something else that I'm not even going to bring up because mixed company. Suffice it to say that when you lose weight, you change shapes and sizes, and sometimes it's really difficult to find clothing that fits you. And I don't know whether I should worry about that now or try to lose more weight and then worry about it. Yeah, Mom, I don't even know that something exists that could utilize all of me. I think we've had this conversation before. There are not a lot of niches in the world that need creative and scientific and whatever I am. I am happy right now. I'm really happy because I have an end date and I have an escape plan, and no matter what I wind up doing, I'm going to be in a better place. And really that's the big thing right now is I need to be in a healthy environment. And Julian, that is why they make belts. And if necessary, suspenders. Yeah, so I'm feeling much better than I was. Um, it's been a rough couple of weeks. And yeah, Mom, I had replaced a lot of my clothing because I got to the point where, like Julian said, my pants were falling off because I went down 4 sizes. And even with hips, it's a lost cause. So I've done a lot of thrifting and come up with, I have a wardrobe that's where I'm at. Yeah, Sanford is belt and suspenders if he's working, Julian. Which was interesting because the last job he was where he felt he needed to do belt and suspenders, he didn't necessarily want to show that he was wearing belt and suspenders. So, but yeah, I know, Mom, and that's what I've been telling myself. But at this point, I have a plan and an end date, and that gives me the light at the end of the tunnel that isn't nebulous and being pushed off. And we've got some things to take care of and wrap up, and then we can launch into the next adventure. And whatever form it takes. But I should have the case of the perambulating hat rack out. I'm actually shooting for April 1st because it's very appropriate to launch that book on April Fool's Day. And after that, I need to get with my co-author on the children's book illustrations. I've gotten a bit jammed up on those. I need to do some batting things around with him. I have about 40,000 words on Tanager's Flight. I know where I'm going with the next section. I have not been writing. I have not been writing. I have um, some things that I want to get done as far as short stories, and those may take precedence for a little while to the novels because it means that I don't have quite as much I can have less pressure because I'm not looking at a huge plot line that I have to keep straight and characters. And sometimes with short stories, I can sit down and write them in a day if I have everything in my head ready to come out. That doesn't happen all the time. So the next one I'm going to finish, I've got to finish up the story that I started writing about the reed dragons. That started for one of the prompts, and I will take it and elongate it. And that one may get sent off for the Baen Fantasy Award. I have to kind of figure out where I'm going with it. I'm about halfway through it right now, and I've got to come up with a nice, crunchy ending. I have to revisit my story Zombie Maggots and rewrite that. That's for a friend's anthology, and that's due this summer. So it's not urgent, but I like to start on things, and then if something goes wrong, I'm not crunched for a deadline at the end. And I would like to have a story in Misha Burnett's YA anthology because I'll be publishing it. So I will be writing a story to send to Misha. And we are soliciting stories. So if any of you know somebody that writes and is interested in doing a young adult short story, the premise, and this is something that Misha and I talked about, and I told him what I was going to do was give him basically free editorial range. I'm just handling the publishing. I'm not doing the editing. I'm not going to interfere in his idea of what he wants for stories. But I really, really liked it, which is why I said I would publish it, even though, rule of thumb, I don't do publisher things. This year is all kinds of adventures. But what Misha wants is basically young adult action adventure stories, but he wants the young adults in question to be products of healthy families, not necessarily the traditional mother-father role models, but that they have healthy, nurturing relationships with the adults in their lives. And he doesn't want to see kids having to strike out on their own and fight the foul, foul world that we live in. He wants adventures that are wholesome and uplifting and realistic and don't involve the kids fighting the adults. And that's not something you see a lot in YA these days. So I was all for this anthology, and I need to probably sit down with my evil muse this weekend and I'll spitball some ideas for building that, because that one has a due date for submissions by mid-May. And given my position, I might be able to monkey with the thing, but I'm not going to abuse that. So, yeah, and then the other anthology that I'm soliciting stories for is going to be coming out for the holiday season. And Lieutenant Colonel Chris Denote sent me a story to read. He wanted to know if I'd be willing to publish it for free on one of the blogs that I write for. And I read it. It made me cry. And I told him that it needs a little bit of work, which I need to get back to him about. And I told him that if he was willing, I would run an anthology with that as the keynote piece, because it is a beautiful story. And that on top of the reading that I had been doing, Jen Satterley's book and Bessel van der Kolk, with the body keeps the score, talking about how we physically manifest the effects of trauma, which is an excellent book. Very difficult to read if you're dealing with any of that in your own life. If you have someone in your life that is dealing with, especially chronic long-term traumas, it's probably an excellent one to read. But between those and Dorothy Grant's blog about reading Jen Satterley's book and some of the things that brought out for her and her husband, what I wanted for this anthology was to write people that are dealing with PTSD and the fact that it separates you from being able to come home. I want stories that model healing and hope while portraying a realistic dealing with trauma, dealing with that separation, that glass wall that you wind up with between you and your loved ones. And I've got several people that are talking about possibly writing stories for it. It's I'll be taking stories for that through September. Because I want to put it out in November for the holidays. And I'm really looking forward to that. I think that one's going to be a really poignant project. But it means that I have a full slate of, and this is not even, I'm not even talking about all of the other projects that I would like to be working on. And this is on top of trying to get the day job sorted out. Once I get the day job sorted out, my creativity should start to kick back in. Maybe. Might take a while if we wind up moving, especially if we wind up moving in a hurry. And I miss writing, and I definitely have days where I want to be writing. I find that the art continues to be easier when my brain is full. And actually that's part of why I've been doing the natural history illustrations, because there's not a lot of creativity in that. It's technique. It's very technical, and technical is easy. I mean, it might not seem like it, and there's certainly times that I run out of patience for drawing fur and feathers with all the teeny tiny little details. But the technical rather than the creative is easier. And then there's the days that I just doodle, and the people that follow my art in the groups get whatever fell out of my head. I don't know, sometimes I have to wonder. I'm trying to work on my self-talk, on my inner voices. And one of the refrains that I get in my head is, am I good enough? Or basically saying I'm not good enough. And that's really difficult for me to conquer. It comes out in subtle ways. And I'm like, I have no idea why I have fans, because I don't think of myself as being good enough to. But then I read, like, Papa Pat Patterson did a review of The Violet Mouse, and I love Papa Pat. I mean, I've got to find the time to get down to Georgia and give him a hug. But he reviewed, and this short story, it has a cliffhanger ending. I mean, I don't think that anyone that goes and looks at the book on Amazon or reads the reviews can fail to notice that it has a cliffhanger ending, and some people hated it and some people loved it. But there was literally no more of that story. That's where it ends. And I've thought about coming back to it and trying to revisit and write what happens afterward. But Pat reviewed it and he really liked it. And I'm just reading this and I'm like, is he talking about me? And I don't know. I have trouble accepting it sometimes. And it was a wonderful review. I just, Mom, I read Pat's review and I had to go look up the specific sentence he referenced. Because I was like, wait, which one is he talking about? I tend not to remember my work that closely. I wish sometimes that I could make a living writing and doing the art. I love it so much and it feeds me, and getting to see reviews just gives me motivation to just do more. And I I, I just can't, and I regret that sometimes. There was a point there, a crux, when Sanford and I talked about me not continuing with school and taking on student loans. But as Pixie Noir was selling so well, much better than we expected, we thought, well, I could do all the advertising and the promotion and just buckle down and write and put out 3 or 4 books a year, and we could make enough to live on. The problem with that is that it would have meant that I would have had to have given up completely on my dream of becoming a scientist. And we might have been able to make enough for the two of us to live on, but I think we would have had a real problem when we got to the point where we had the kids. I don't know. I mean, I know that I have fellow indies that are making good money, and part of the reason I'm not is because I'm terrible at promotion and I don't do ads and I don't put the money into it, turning it back around and reinvesting in the business like I should. I mean, I've invested in art stuff because this last 2020 I made more money on art than I did on books. And the market is volatile. And I think after all those years of being self-employed that I've kind of developed an aversion to volatility and trying to be out there with no safety net. I'm tensing up just thinking about it. I don't think I could do that again. I think that in order to do that, I really do need to have some kind of security. And just writing and art alone don't give me that security. So I guess that's maybe. I mean, I still have a couple of people I do covers for, but even those I haven't been promoting doing that work because I haven't had time. I mean, the last few months have just been crazy chaotic, and I've been in a bad headspace, and part of the reason I'm so happy tonight is I'm feeling lighter. I'm feeling a lot of relief for having started to make some decisions and get myself into a better place. And I don't think I had really realized just how bad it was getting until I started to climb out of it again. And that scares me because I've been in situations like that where it got really, really dark. And I'm very bad at seeing when the lights start to dim. I don't trust myself there. And that worries me. But that's what I have Sanford for. That is what I have you all for. That's part of why I started doing this, because things were getting very dim, and sitting here talking to my laptop, as crazy as it sounds, helps a little bit, especially because I can see you guys, you're responding to me, and I love that you're there, and thank you for listening, because getting a little mushy here. I need to figure out some kind of a routine, but Mom's right. It's going to be at least a month or two before that happens again. One of the local jobs that I'm looking at, the commute's just about an hour. If I am offered that and take it, then I am going to really focus on my dictation. and getting it to the point where I don't have a massive amount of editing at the end of the dictation, because I find that really difficult to deal with. Oh, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. Johan had a little buddy over last night. It's his friend's spring break. And yes, I heard about the puppet show with the cardboard boxes. I haven't done any kind of puppetry in ages. I don't think I even have any puppets anymore. I'd have to use my wool socks. Oh, Mom, I'm hoping next weekend, since this weekend isn't going to work. And I went ahead and gave Sanford his birthday present because it's his birthday next weekend. And your birthday the day after his birthday. But if I come down there for Easter Sunday, I'll want to go to church too. Oh, where was I? Yes. So Johan had a friend over because it's his friend's spring break, so he could come over and hang out. And the little stinker, teenage boys, he didn't think through the fact that he had an alarm set for 5 a.m., and it wasn't waking him up. But it woke me up. Sorry, Mom. Yes, socks with little cat ears. I'll have to see if I can find those again and send some to Juniper. Well, I'm glad you rescued the sock, Mom. Mine, I usually have to swipe them back from the boy. Although he's gotten better because I did buy him his own wool socks. So now he's got his. And his feet are so big that I don't know if he could wear my wool socks anymore. His feet may be too big for mine. I mean, I have big feet for a girl, but they're not that big. He's wearing a 14 wide. So, hi, John. Well, I figured that's what she was going to do, Mom. I suppose I shouldn't mention button eyes either. Oh, now I want to play with puppets. No, I don't have time. So, those of you that don't know, I talk about being a performer. And what I was for 16 years was I was a balloon twister, did a little bit of comedy magic, and I was a face painter. And how that got started was I met my ex while I was on the puppet team in college. The Christian college that I attended when I was 18 required all of the students to choose a service, and then they had to do that. So I had been told that I was tone deaf, so chorale was out. I can't play an instrument, so that kind of thing was out. Street team evangelism still sounds like a bad idea. And I forget what else there was, but the oddballs, those few of us who are very, very odd, wound up in puppet team. And that's where I wound up was puppet team. So I was on the puppet team for a year. And I really enjoyed it. We were a small, tight-knit group. There was, I think, 8 of us by the end. My ex came in mid-semester, so he joined midway through the year. So he was only there for the latter half of the year as far as puppet team goes. But it was a small, tight-knit group. We traveled all over the place. I mean, I think we even went into Ohio. The school was based in West Virginia. And I really enjoyed that. That was my first taste of performing. And when you're doing puppets, you're not actually, these weren't the kind of puppets where you're visible. We were behind a pipe and drape setup with these big, awkward, clunky, Muppet-style puppets. And I enjoyed it. And so later on, when I got dragged into clowning, And there's a reason I say I was never actually a clown. Clowning is a calling, not a job. And you can dress up like a clown, but it doesn't actually make you a clown. But I got dragged into clowning as kind of part of this thing. We were doing it in nursing homes and going and visiting the elderly and doing little comedy shtick and making people laugh. And I found that really rewarding and continued to find that rewarding throughout my career, was that I like making people laugh and I like getting an audience going. There's that feedback, that visceral feedback really rewards me, which is strange because I'm not an extrovert. I'm a trained extrovert. When I'm performing, I have a mask, not a actual mask unless I'm in full paint, but it's more of a I switch, and performance cedar is not normal cedar, if there's a normal cedar. And so Puppet Team was this really great experience that started me down a very strange path. And for as much as my late marriage was not good in so many ways, there's a reason I don't trust myself to tell when the light is going dark. It also did have good things that came out of it. I mean, I have 4 wonderful children. I wound up with a interesting job that I never would have chosen on my own, but I found it fulfilling and rewarding. And it got me out of some tight places when that was a way I could go back to doing something I knew how to do and could make money with. I occasionally miss it. Yes, outgoing introvert is probably about right. I find it exhausting. If I go and I perform, even if I'm on a panel at a con, I get a buzz off of it. But that doesn't last for very long, and it is tiring. And if I'm going to just go out and like mingle with people, I don't have the performance mask, and I find that that's really difficult for me. I'm not entirely over the agoraphobia that my late marriage left me with. I am not good about going places for the first time and meeting new people for the first time. And I don't know, the psychology behind it is interesting because technically it's a fear of groups of people, of crowds. Agora translates to the marketplace, the mall, literally fear of the mall. And I find malls frightening. So, but there's also some of the psychology as of fear of rejection. And since that's definitely one of my hang-ups, I can see that. But the thing is, when I'm performing, I don't get that. And I don't know that it's confidence because I didn't, when I was starting on some of these techniques and styles, I was certainly not confident about it. And right now, if somebody wanted me to walk on stage and do a thing, I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. I'm so out of practice. I probably still have some magic props around here. Speaking of things that should get purged. Yeah, Dad is almost aggressively gregarious. My father has a talent for talking to people for a long, long, long time. And maybe I have some of it too, which is why I'm sitting here talking to my laptop and all of y'all on the other side. I think this is probably still feeding some of those audience things that I do miss a little bit, because you definitely don't get that in the lab. It's not that I'm working solo. I have coworkers. We have conversations. One of my coworkers and I talk about food all the time. Another one and I talk about cats all the time. I need to take a picture of the kitten being cute. She's asleep on the guest bed behind the laptop, and she's being very, very cute and fluffy. She is not a cuddly cat, which is okay. But once in a while, she'll get in a mood where she wants to be on you and bite you, because she's a bitey cat. Although she's learning not to bite so hard. This is improvement. But she's crashed out over there asleep. That's the other thing about moving and trying to find a place to rent is we have a dog and a cat. And the dog doesn't look large, but technically she is large because she weighs more than 50 pounds. So that changes the dynamic a lot of trying to find a place to rent. And frankly, I can't blame landlords. I have heard horror stories about rentals that got messed up by people that had animals that were not behaving well, or humans that weren't behaving well, and the animals were just doing what animals do. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to sit down and have a conversation with my husband about this thing, because I've got to make a clear-headed decision, and it's difficult. It's really difficult to just add up all the pros and cons and give it a step back and make that choice. Because I always feel like when there's a door open, if I don't walk through it, I'm missing out. And that's not necessarily a safe thing, to always take the fork in the road and be like, oh, where does this go? Especially because this decision is going to have to be a long-term decision. I've got to settle in one place and do one thing for a few years before I try to make another step. It's frustrating sometimes because, well, it's like, I was talking to two of the QC analysts at work, and QC likes to hire people that are fresh out of school, like this is their first job out of school. There are reasons for this. So I knew that the two latest new hires that one of them I hadn't met, the other one I had. I knew that they were young because they look young, but they were talking about ages and talking to each other, and I just happened to be there, and I turned around, and one had said she was 23, and I turned around and I looked at the other one, and I'm like, and how old are you? And he's like, oh, I'm 24. And I said, you're both babies. My oldest daughter is 22. And they started to laugh. But I'm like, what I have done with rebooting the career, because I was 40 when I graduated with my bachelor's, and I rebooted my career so late, I feel like I'm behind, that I keep having to take steps backward. And if I keep doing that, I'll never make the forward momentum, which is why I need to settle down and do what I've got to do. I mean, I had hoped to be able to do that in the current position, but unfortunately, it's gone from bad to worse, and my physical and mental health both are suffering, and I can't do this anymore to myself, even if it's rough on my family to have to deal with another transition. Mom, Johan would not be willing to part with his kitty. However, I may be bringing the two princesses back down to you. Long hairs or not, the girls can't cope with them, and we can't take them here. I get very allergic to them. I do all right with Inspector Gidget because she's a short hair, but the long hairs, I go over to that house and my face starts to itch, and I just want to take my skin off. So, something to that effect. I know that, but I also have the other experience That's why one of the positions that's a customer service type position, I'm hoping they'll get back to me, because if I could use both the chemistry, and I've got 20 years of customer service experience of one flavor or another, if I could combine all of this, that might be good. And I'd like to have a remote position that's the ideal. I'm looking at the lab jobs because that's the groove that I'm stuck in. Yeah, John, I know that, but um, no, Mom, they know that they'd have to be outside, and I know that that's an issue, and that's possible. We'll see if we can rehome them that way, because they are very pretty kitties. I don't know that I entirely trust, but then again, that I've gotten a cat on Craigslist, so I guess I shouldn't say that. I know the kids worry about the cats being adopted by somebody that means them harm, and I definitely would not want to see that happen. I didn't know if Susan would want the cats back, but I don't think so. She keeps giving you cats, so. Gidget, pardon me for a second. My menfolk, in their quest to make me happy and keep me comfortable, had closed the door, so Gidget was trapped in here with me. John, I think we've talked about that before, and it gives me hope because I've thought about going back to school. I don't know when or how I'd afford it at this point. Definitely after all the kids are fully launched, I think. Yeah, that's what I thought, Mom. I don't know what the future holds. I know that I can make plans, and then I'm going to probably have to change the plans. One of the things I keep getting asked in interviews over and over again is, how do you deal with change? Just little changes of, okay, we want you to do this first instead of the other thing we asked you to do. And do we want changes in lab instrumentation and workflow structure? And I don't mind change at all, but I also occasionally want to just kind of have a bored groove for a little while. That's probably the wrong way to put it. I'm not sure that I want to be bored. In fact, I'm pretty sure I don't want to be bored. I think what I want is some routine, a framework, and change within that framework. And yeah, that probably is what I should be looking at for positions, is something that gives me a framework to hang other things on. The tentative offer that would require us to move and the health insurance is wicked expensive. One of the weird things about it that's kind of a pro and kind of a con is that it is 4 10-hour shifts. So I get 3 days off. Yeah, Beth, that's kind of what Sanford has run into. We haven't been able to find him a job, and at this point, he's kind of resigned to being retired. And I'm okay with that. It does put a lot of pressure on me because I'm the only income right now, but I don't want him to feel completely depressed about the fact that he can't get a job. And he may pick up something part-time. I actually think that would be really good for him to pick up something part-time. And he's I don't know if he didn't realize that I was on today or if he's not watching. So he gets to hear me enough. I say that, and I'm going to wrap this up because it's been an hour now. But I say that like I talk a lot with him, and actually, he and Johan fight over me and my attention, which is equal parts flattering and frustrating. Because I'm like, I will try to split myself evenly, but sometimes it's hard. And sometimes it means I have no time for me. Well, folks, thank you again. Actually, just in talking through this, I think I've cemented some things. Yeah, Uncle Gary was working last time I talked to him, but that's been quite a while. This is, I think this has helped solidify some of my decision making processes. Just talking to you all and even being as vague as I have to be, since nothing's set in stone right now. So I hope you all have a good week. And I hope that I have some kind of news by this time next week. That's kind of an exciting thought. I like that. Goats are awesome, Beth. I'm kind of glad I don't have goats right now, but I would happily come visit your goats. Well, folks, you have a good week. Thank you.